or you picked up the sheet when you came in where we're taking a look at repetitions within the book. And a fair number of these we already talked about. So I think in some ways it's going to be review. And I know we didn't talk about your synthesis prompt, and some of us, like Greta, just like got our synthesis prompt and don't even yet know what it is. Who knows if Vince even knows what it is yet? Can you look at it?
It's
Okay. Synthesis prompt Friday. So that is something that certainly you're going to want to start to take a look at and kind of game plan. Tomorrow being Wednesday, we might be ready to start talking about it briefly a little bit in the class. The plan on Thursday would be, let's kind of go over whatever questions and things like that you have beyond the what should I write question. And what would be some good examples just to gain along with page numbers that I could include. The thing with synthesis that most people worry about is not so much the argument, it's utilizing the sources. So you have to use 5 sources from the pack that you have. Remember, it was the other ones that you have got before those as well. One of those 5 is Invisible Man, and you have to have 3 quotes from Invisible Man. Now you can have those marked down certainly ahead of time, so you come in, you're not flipping through pages, but you know exactly what you're going to go with. With the repetition aspect, if you can have one event parlay itself into multiple events, taking care of that 3 citation requirement really won't be that bad. Also, if you can see where a lot of the sources start to parallel events or characters from the book, you can take care of using an Invisible Man citation and additional source. For example, let's say something that I want to use within a body paragraph, I want to take a look at the graduation speech that Tim gives in chapter 1. If I'm going that route, I already know one of the sources that I'm absolutely going to use besides Invisible Man. If I'm using his graduation speech, what source is there a pretty good chance I'm going to be able to incorporate? Cast Down Your Bucket, because he is certainly using that speech, and just because I am using source A, Booker T. Washington, doesn't mean I have to quote from it. The only one you got to quote from is Invisible Man. If I'm taking a look at the founder and the college, I also probably have a source that I'm going to be able to use fairly quickly, similar to Cast Down Your Bucket, this time the visual source with the statue. So if you can start to pick up on where are some places, assuming they help your argument, where you can knock out multiple things, you'd be silly not to use it. So I don't think using those sources is necessarily going to be a difficult trying thing for you to do. Format of it looks a little bit different so far as the font, but the numbers, the items on there, I think it's what, 1 through 9 that you have. Taking a look at those, which ones right away do you start to go, okay, I can see where this idea repeats itself, or at least whether it be directly or indirect concepts within them coming up multiple times throughout.
Look at the bird droppings. It's like
Okay.
white powders, black powders, or like whitewashing.
There we go. Maybe. Okay. So the bird droppings on the statue, kind of linking that up with the whole whitewashing idea. Sure. And you could absolutely, number 1, use the whole whitewashing aspect with Liberty Hoops. That didn't work. There we go. That whole whitewashing thing with Liberty Paints would certainly work because the paint literally whitewashes buildings. So Liberty Paints. I guess it was 5th period. Someone mentioned that the Liberty Paint, in some way, it kind of also is a little bit of an inverse, where you have statue of Black Man with white drops going onto it, and then in Liberty Paints, you have the white paint bucket with the black drops going in. The idea is still the same, though, in both, where that white comes out on top. So regardless, I guess you could argue, of proportion that's getting used, it's still going to kind of stain it or change it a little bit. So you could take a look at the white versus black drops that would be going in. So yeah, that would absolutely be one thing. Sam? Yeah.
With True Blood, or are we done with the whitewashing?
Well, anything more with like number 4? So I think there would be a few more things. And then you want to move on to number 5 with True Blood. Okay, Megan?
Like the lines on the road.
think I know where you're talking about, but
It's like at the beginning when he's driving, he's like, I can't cross over the white line. Who's driving? Yeah.
when he's in the car with Norton and they're going back to school, he's kind of like, in a sense, towing the line, where he doesn't want to kind of cross over that white line, that boundary, where you certainly do get the idea of maybe some imagery with racial roles taking place. So the white lines in the car. This is kind of getting away from bird droppings at the point, but since we're using this, I don't think we mentioned the whole idea before. When he chauffeurs Tim around, they go to Golden Day. What is Vet Doctor's kind of warning to Tim? Or what would be like Vet Doctor's criticism of Tim? There's a couple different things he says. He's the one who brings up the idea about play the game, don't believe it. He really goes into detail with that on the bus ride back when they're heading up north, but it's still the Vet Doctor that will be doing it.
He's saying that, like, while Tim is a black man, he's obeying the whites too much.
And in the study guide, I think the phrase that got used was the whole walking zombie idea, where he's not thinking. And he even then uses the term automaton, which means robot. And after Tim drops off Norton, he's paraphrasing, but he gives a line, "Is there anything else that you need today, sir?" And Norton goes, "No, I have no more use for the machine." And it's a great pronoun, like antecedent type question, because machine, we would assume, means no need for the car. But you just had the Vet Doctor talking about, hey, you're basically a robot. You're not anything to these people. And Norton goes, no, I don't need the machine. We're kind of ambiguous. Are you talking about the car, or are you talking about Tim? At that point. So not really bird droppings, but certainly Tim's still that naive, not knowing exactly what way to go. Did anyone pick up toward the end of the book when bird droppings themselves pop up again? I guess they don't pop up; they drop down.
Was it at the end when they were burning the building?
You're in that chapter, like not while they're burning the building, is birds pooping all over the place.
Is it when he's running away from the?
And he's running, and he goes underneath the bridge, and there's the pigeons are on top, and they drop, and he runs away, and he noticed that he is stained with the white marks all over him again. Which it's kind of funny again that he's running away from Jack and Brotherhood. Remember, Jack said you could be the next Booker T. Washington, or how would you like to be the next Booker T. Washington? Which we got a picture of a statue of it where it has been, now whitewashed, stained, and Tim, trying to get away from the Brotherhood, kind of has a little bit of a Booker T. Washington moment there. Again, like he does earlier with that whole graduation speech that takes place. So, not that Tim turns into a statue, but Tim and bird poop, you do have there at the end pop it up again. Anything else for number 4? Aubrey wants to take a look at 5. Joey, one more thing with 4?
Oh no, I was.
Okay. What would you want to start with?
Okay, so it's kind of like going with the black stereotype, because like it starts out with like Norton giving Jim money after like tells a story, and then the black like stereotype happens again. Wait, Jack's white, right?
Yes.
Okay.
What would you and this can mean many things. What would, because we say the stereotype over and over again, but I don't know how many times we ever really say what the stereotype is.
It's like, well, Jim kind of like fulfills like the white man's like stereotype of like the black man by like he's kind of like an animal.
Okay.
And you like seem to realize it. He's kind of like oblivious to like his like ignorance. If
Okay.
that makes sense. And then it like repeats itself when like Emma says that Tim's not black enough.
Okay.
So he's like too civilized. Almost.
So the reinforcement of that stereotype. So not so much the storytelling of what Jim's doing, but the stereotype that people have towards Jim now being applied towards other people, where Emma, could even say Jack, would be having that stereotype toward Tim. Okay, yeah, makes sense. And Joey, right before we get into you, and this kind of leads into another one as well, you could certainly argue from a symbolic object standpoint, what other objects have that stereotype as well? The bank, if you mention the bank, then the Sambo doll pretty much kind of goes along with it. So that stereotype certainly comes up over and over and over again. Joey?
I was going to talk about the storytelling version of it.
Yeah.
And how Jim Trueblood is kind of like the envisionment of what Tim doesn't want to see in, I guess, himself and the black race. Then he turns into Jim Trueblood. I mean, he doesn't do what Jim Trueblood did, but he goes and he tells stories for white people that supported a cause for money.
So whether it be Trueblood getting $100, Brock White not storytelling but getting paid the $300, the money that he's getting from Brotherhood, you see that kind of coming up over and over. Okay. Hey. I didn't see the. Is there a recent one? Okay, I'll have to take a look at that one. Just kind of aside. I'll take a look at a little. Okay. Oh, is it the chat? Yeah. Amy gets the same. No, not yet, but I can already predict how it's going to go. Yep. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye. And yeah, certainly that being paid to tell a story, and certainly there'd be a combination that would work with both, where being paid to fulfill a stereotype knowingly or unknowingly certainly takes place, getting compensated for it. Joey, you mentioned, not that Tim did what Trueblood did. However, there certainly are some parallels that kind of take place because I think with Trueblood we tend to forget about the dream sequence that he has that kind of leads into the action that takes place. Trueblood goes to a house, Mr. and Mrs. Broadnax, knocks on the door, goes in, walks in. Who was there in the room? There's a white woman, birds fly out, all this kind of weird stuff going on. And then he hears the voices in the other room. Well, fulfilling that stereotype, and Ellison's kind of playing off that sexual taboo that would be taking place. Second half of the book, Tim, Sybil. Sybil has a stereotype that she is certainly, looking to be fulfilled. You have Tim and Hubert's wife, where you then have Hubert shows up, and you're waiting for this big confrontation to take place, and nothing happens. Almost kind of like what's going on in the dream in some way. So part of those things still do get fulfilled. Thank you. Not in the literal sense that happened with Trueblood's actions, obviously, but there are certainly more parallels that would take place between Tim and Jim than you would expect. Now you understand why Ellison calls Tim Tim, even though Ellison doesn't call Tim Tim, because Tim's like Jim. Tim Jim. See? I don't remember what I said. But the only thing I can think would be, because obviously we don't, the only names that he really gives is he says, "Call me Jack the Bear," which I don't think means his real name is Jack. Might have been before he gets like his Brotherhood identity, but we still don't know what that identity is. So no, there's not that secret passage where Stan.
Why didn't you have to include the
Well, final answer, I don't know. I think though, the effect of it does a couple things. It keeps it very universal. I think certainly, with Tim, black protagonist, you look at it being a racial issue, but I think it still gives it some universal appeal that kind of takes place, that it's not something that would only be happening to African Americans. I think if you, on a literary sense, though, maybe more so, if you give him a real name, then you give him an identity, which would kind of defeat the whole purpose. I think the parts for me where I go, Allison's pretty good at what he does, is there's not really moments in the book where it seems like, okay, his name should be right here, but it reads very awkwardly, the fact that the name is missing. Maybe when the identity he finds out is on a piece of paper, you go, oh, what's the name? But it doesn't happen. And I think separately from that, I think like the Sybil scene, I think is wonderfully written, because it's a very kind of melancholy sense of sadness that's going on, and I don't know of any other writer that could take something so perverse and turn it into something where, like, oh, I feel bad for both of them, even though there's this horrible stereotype coming in, and then Santa Claus gets thrown in. So now you have two books with Santa Claus, Cuckoo's Nest and Chief has one of his, you assume it's a dream, talks about Santa Claus coming down, and then the aides like hold him back and all that kind of stuff, and gets pulled off into a loony bin. So, but that's like a motif across books.
I kind of have a question about the Sybil scene.
We all have questions.
I have a couple questions actually. Number one, was Sybil white?
Yes.
Okay. Number two.
And so when Ra, the interactions that when Clifton is still alive, that Tim and Clifton have with Roz talks about that, like, they're just using you. You're being a stereotype for them.
Yeah.
This would be kind of like in one of those ways where
she's like asking to be.
Yeah, sure. Her fantasy is to be raped by black man, and he is supposed to fulfill that. Now he obviously doesn't, but it would still be him being stereotyped in that uncivilized, barbaric, sexual way, where essentially she's trying to make him into True Blood, and he's not going to do it.
And did her husband actually come back, or was that just a weird theory?
Well, that's the blending of the two.
Yeah.
Because when he first gets switched over to the women's movement, when he's like demoted, so to speak, that's the one with Hubert's wife, where we don't she only goes by Hubert's wife, whereas Sybil, is towards the end. We're under. It's a dream-like sequence, but generally when he goes into dream mode, the syntax shifts into italics, and that does not happen.
Was Sybil one of the dead people that was hanging out? At the end, he was always they hung a bunch of women from lampposts.
No, because they're not. It's not real people. It's mannequins with the department store and all that kind of stuff. And that's despite all kind of switching gears a little bit, but still with Sybil, despite Sybil having that stereotype, which is again pretty barbaric and savage in a way, Tim is still worried about her as a person, where he doesn't just get up and leave, but making sure that she's going to be taken care of and be able to get out of there before all hell breaks loose and all those things. So Tim, by the end, and kind of thinking prologue, you do think of him as maybe being a little bit more, I don't want to say violent necessarily, but more certainly assertive than what you had before with naive Tim. But it's not that all the humanity has been stripped away from him, in that sense. Why don't we just stop right there, because Bell's going to ring in a couple minutes. We're not going to get too far with one of these. So the plan for tomorrow, I'd like to kind of go through more of these, maybe not go into quite as much detail with all of them, but we'll see what happens. And then that'll lead us into taking a look at the synthesis prompt, possibly end of class tomorrow, certainly Thursday, so that you have a good idea of what you want to do come Monday, or excuse me, come Friday, not Monday. Friday.